I was really nervous, so Mel gave me a few puffs of his cigar to try to relax me.
She wasn't just a mermaid on screen. She was the one who convinced a generation that magic was real. She wasn't only an android either. She was the kind that slipped into our nightmares and stayed there long after the credits rolled. Throughout one extraordinary decade, she dominated Hollywood, commanding movie screens with a presence audiences couldn't forget. And then, at the exact moment the industry still wanted more of her, she slowly began to fade from view. What follows is the dramatic rise and unexpected fall of Daryl Hannah, a painfully shy girl who found her voice through film. Born as Daryl Christine Hannah on December 3, 1960, her story began in Chicago, Illinois, far from the spotlight that would later define her life. She was raised by her mother, Susan Jean Meeser, a school teacher who would later become a producer, and her father, Donald Christian Hannah, a businessman who ran a tugboat and barge company. To the outside world, she appeared like any ordinary child, but behind that quiet exterior, Daryl was battling inner struggles few around her could truly understand. Painfully shy and emotionally cut off, she struggled to find her place in the world. At school, every day felt like an uphill climb she wasn't prepared for. Even the simplest social moments felt crushing, as if they demanded skills she didn't have. While other children bonded effortlessly, Daryl lived behind an invisible barrier no one else could see. And at an age when few understood it and many feared it, she was diagnosed with autism in a time filled with stigma and silence. Her childhood was further unsettled when her parents divorced, and her mother later married businessman Gerald Wexler, the brother of legendary cinematographer Haskell Wexler. Growing up, Daryl shared her home with sisters Dawn and Paige Hannah, along with her maternal half-sister Tanya Wexler. Concerned doctors examined her and delivered a chilling recommendation, urging her parents to institutionalize her and rely on heavy medication. Susan Hannah refused to accept that future for her daughter. Instead of surrendering, she made a bold choice, temporarily moving with Daryl to Jamaica in search of healing and clarity. The change didn't just help, it transformed Daryl in ways her mother never could have predicted. Returning to Chicago, she enrolled at the progressive Francis W. Parker School, but it wasn't the classroom where she truly felt at home. That sanctuary existed in movie theaters, where chronic insomnia led her to spend endless nights watching films. Inside the darkness of the cinema, she finally felt safe, unseen, and unjudged. There, her shyness lost its power because no one was watching her anymore. Movies became her emotional translator, teaching her feelings and connections that real life made confusing. By her teenage years, her path became clear. Acting was never about attention or fame, it was about escape. Becoming someone else offered what real life never had. Wearing another identity meant leaving her awkwardness behind. For Daryl, that transformation felt like freedom. At just 17 years old, she moved to Los Angeles and enrolled at the University of Southern California to study ballet and acting. Her years of dance training gave her a striking physical grace that would soon set her apart. That grace reached the screen in 1978, when she made her film debut at 17 in Brian De Palma's horror film The Fury. The role was small, but it opened the door. Then came The Replicant that would change everything. In 1982, director Ridley Scott began pre-production on what would become one of the most influential science fiction films of all time. Blade Runner, adapted from Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, was a risky, expensive bet on a bleak, philosophical future. Casting the role of Pris was no simple task. The character, a basic pleasure model replicant with acrobatic elegance and sudden violence, demanded contradiction. She had to be beautiful yet disturbing, fragile yet lethal, human yet undeniably artificial. At just 21 years old, Daryl Hannah walked into the audition. With her otherworldly features, piercing blue-green eyes, and disciplined ballet background, she was unlike anyone Ridley Scott had ever seen. Landing the role was only the beginning, but it would send her career down a path no one saw coming. Once filming began, Daryl made a creative choice that permanently defined the character. Although the script noted that Pris possessed gymnastic abilities due to her enhancements, it offered no detail on how that should look on screen. Drawing from years of dance training and natural athleticism, Daryl invented the character's physical language herself. The eerie cartwheels, the stiff, doll-like movements, the sudden flips that made Pris feel elegant and dangerous at the same time, all of it came straight from her imagination. Seeing what she brought to the role, Ridley Scott leaned in, weaving more of those movements into the film as shooting progressed. The production itself was demanding. Rather than relying on doubles, Daryl performed many of her own stunts, including the grueling fight scenes. Everything about Pris became iconic. The stark white coat, the heavy black eye makeup, the precise styling of her blonde hair, forming an image that would linger in audiences' minds for decades. When Blade Runner premiered in June 1982, success was not immediate. At the box office, the film disappointed, and critics were deeply divided. Its deliberate pacing, dense philosophy, and bleak future confused viewers expecting a conventional sci-fi adventure. Studio-mandated changes, including voice-over narration and a more hopeful ending, further muddled Ridley Scott's original vision. For a time, the film appeared destined for obscurity. Yet Daryl Hannah's performance as Pris refused to fade. That white coat, her unnatural movements, the brutal confrontation with Harrison Ford, it all stayed burned into memory. As Blade Runner found a second life on home video and was re-examined by critics, its reputation transformed. What was once dismissed slowly earned recognition as a masterpiece. Pris became one of cinema's most enduring figures, and Daryl's contribution to that legacy is impossible to ignore. Even today, she considers Blade Runner the high point of her career. That same year, she revealed a very different side of herself in Summer Lovers, a sensual romance set in Greece about a couple who invite a third person into their relationship. The role highlighted her range, shifting from cold machinery to warmth, desire, and emotional freedom. Hollywood was beginning to notice this tall, blonde actress who could move effortlessly between extremes. I wouldn't say I was introverted, I was more out there somewhere, lost in a dream world. Then came the role that made her a star. In 1984, everything changed for Daryl Hannah. Ron Howard, already an accomplished director after his own childhood acting career, was preparing a romantic comedy built on a risky idea, a man falling in love with a mermaid. At the time, it didn't sound like a guaranteed hit. Handled poorly, the concept could have felt silly or overly sweet. The role demanded someone magical yet grounded, playful yet emotionally sincere. Audiences needed to believe in the impossible and fall for it. That responsibility landed on Daryl Hannah, cast as Madison the mermaid opposite a young Tom Hanks, still early in what would become a legendary career. What she delivered was pure movie magic. Preparing for the role was no small task. She trained herself to swim like a mermaid, locking her legs together to mimic the movement of a tail. In truth, it was a skill she'd been quietly practicing since childhood, inspired by a lifelong fascination with Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Mermaid. What audiences never saw was just how demanding the mermaid tail really was. Fully functional and weighing more than 35 pounds, it turned every underwater scene into a physical endurance test. Rather than relying on doubles, Daryl handled much of the underwater work herself, spending long hours submerged during filming. Yet for all the physical strain, it was her performance, not the spectacle, that made the movie work. Comedy came naturally to her. With flawless timing, she found humor in Madison's fish-out-of-water confusion without ever reducing the character to something silly or superficial. Whether she was crunching into a lobster shell, emerging naked at the Statue of Liberty after losing her dress, fumbling through the chaos of New York City, or learning English by watching televisions at Bloomingdale's, every moment carried both laughter and heart. The romance worked just as well. Opposite Tom Hanks, Daryl created a chemistry that felt genuine and earned. When Madison revealed her true identity, and when she chose to return to the sea with Alan, the emotional stakes felt real. You believed she was in love, and you believed she was giving up everything to be with him. Even the smallest joke left a lasting mark. When Madison chose her name by spotting a street sign for Madison Avenue, it played as a throwaway gag. It was a perfect character beat for someone discovering the human world. Then something no one expected happened. The name Madison, once rare and even considered an odd choice for a girl, suddenly exploded in popularity. After the film's release, parents who adored the character began naming their daughters Madison. The trend didn't fade with time. Decades later, it remains one of the most popular girls' names in America, an unforeseen cultural ripple born from a single romantic comedy. Splash was a phenomenon. Against a modest budget, it earned nearly $70 million at the box office. More importantly, it spread through word of mouth, the kind of movie people insisted their friends had to see. Critics embraced it, audiences loved it, and at the center of it all stood Daryl Hannah. At just 23 years old, she was suddenly a bona fide movie star. The film carried historical weight too, marking the very first release from a new studio called Touchstone Pictures. It was Disney's experiment in more adult storytelling. The gamble paid off. Its success helped launch the studio and proved that fairy tale romance could work for grown-up audiences. Then came the golden years. The rest of the 1980s belonged to Daryl Hannah. Later in 1984, she followed Splash with The Pope of Greenwich Village, starring alongside Mickey Rourke and Eric Roberts, proving she could thrive in grittier material. In 1986, she transformed herself again in The Clan of the Cave Bear, portraying a Cro-Magnon woman. The film wasn't a hit, but it showed her willingness to disappear completely into a role. That same year, she appeared in Legal Eagles, opposite Robert Redford and Deborah Winger. Then came 1987, a turning point marked by two defining films. In Oliver Stone's Wall Street, Daryl played the girlfriend of Charlie Sheen's ruthless young stockbroker. The film became a cultural landmark and won an Academy Award. While Daryl received a Razzie nomination, the movie's success only raised her profile in Hollywood. But 1987 also delivered Roxanne. In this modern reimagining of Cyrano de Bergerac, she starred opposite Steve Martin as the luminous Roxanne. Believing the romantic words whispered to her came from another man, she gave the character warmth and sincerity. Roger Ebert praised her performance as sweet and gentle, noting the depth she brought to what could have been a simple role. The momentum continued. In 1988, she appeared in High Spirits alongside Peter O'Toole. Then 1989 brought two more significant projects. She joined Woody Allen's Crimes and Misdemeanors before stepping into Steel Magnolias. Surrounded by Sally Field, Shirley MacLaine, Dolly Parton, and Julia Roberts, the ensemble became an instant classic. As Annelle, the quiet beautician searching for purpose and faith, Daryl delivered a restrained, heartfelt performance. It was a softer role, and she was quietly wonderful in it. By the end of the decade, Daryl Hannah was everywhere. She'd worked with major directors and proven her range across comedy, drama, science fiction, and romance. Her personal life drew attention too, including a relationship with Jackson Browne and an appearance in his music video, Tender as the Night. From the outside, everything looked perfect. But as the 1990s approached, hairline cracks began to form, and the foundation that once seemed unshakable was about to be tested. As the new decade began, Daryl appeared in Crazy People in 1990, a comedy starring Dudley Moore about an advertising executive who suddenly starts telling the truth. A year later, she shifted gears dramatically, taking on a serious role in At Play in the Fields of the Lord, Hector Babenco's sweeping Amazon-set drama based on Peter Matthiesen's novel. The film struggled at the box office, but it revealed something important about Daryl. She was willing to sacrifice pay and visibility for work that challenged her. Off-screen, however, her life was unraveling. In 1992, Daryl was found badly beaten, bruised, and injured in ways that pointed to serious violence. Almost immediately, rumors erupted that her then-boyfriend, Jackson songwriter Jackson Browne, was responsible. The tabloids seized on the story, plastering it across headlines and magazine covers. The accusations were explosive and damaging to both sides. Brown fiercely denied any involvement. What followed was a long and bitter legal battle, culminating in Brown suing Fox Television for defamation over their reporting. Years later, Brown won the case, and Fox issued a public retraction. What truly happened that day may never be fully known. What is certain is that Daryl and Brown ended their 9-year relationship that same year. The breakup and the controversy surrounding it cast a long shadow over both of their careers. For Daryl, the emotional fallout seemed to coincide with a turning point professionally. She kept working, but the roles began to change. The visibility faded. The momentum slowed. In 1992, she appeared in Memoirs of an Invisible Man alongside Chevy Chase, a sci-fi comedy that failed to connect with audiences. The following year, she starred in the made-for-cable remake of Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, a deliberately campy update of the 1950s B-movie. It was entertaining, but it didn't reinforce her standing as a serious leading actress. There were brighter spots. In 1993 and again in 1995, Daryl appeared in the Grumpy Old Men films. Playing the daughter of Jack Lemmon's character opposite Walter Matthau, she became part of ensemble comedies that audiences actually showed up for. Her performance earned her a Saturn Award for Best Supporting Actress for the first film. It was recognition, but it came with a quiet reality. She was no longer the center of the story. During this same period, her personal life continued to draw attention. From roughly 1989 to 1994, Daryl was romantically linked to John F. Kennedy Jr., one of the most famous and eligible men in America. Their on-again, off-again relationship lasted nearly 5 years. It kept her name circulating in gossip columns far more than in critical reviews. When they finally parted ways in 1994, it marked yet another ending in a decade already full of them. The pattern continued as the decade wore on. In 1995, she appeared in The Tie That Binds, a thriller about adoptive parents confronted by the biological parents of their child. The film slipped by almost unnoticed. A year later came Too Much, a romantic comedy with Antonio Banderas and Melanie Griffith that also failed to leave a mark. The projects kept arriving, but fewer people remembered them. These were the kinds of films that appeared briefly in theaters before quietly disappearing onto video store shelves. Searching for something different, Daryl turned to the stage. In 2000, she made her West End debut in a London production of The 7-Year Itch. The reviews were mixed. Some critics praised her beauty and presence. Others questioned whether the role truly suited her. And by then, the question hovering over her career was no longer, what's next? It was, where did it all go? Others disagreed, arguing she was simply the wrong fit, that the role demanded a different kind of performer. Either way, the stage failed to become a second act for her career. Returning to film didn't reverse the trend either. By the early 2000s, Daryl was working constantly, yet the projects she chose rarely reached wide audiences. Instead of multiplex releases, she gravitated towards smaller independent films. In 2003, she appeared in John Sayles' Casa de los Babies, portraying Skipper, a fiercely athletic woman haunted by 3 miscarriages while waiting in Mexico to adopt a child. The following year, she joined Sayles again in the political satire Silver City. These were exactly the kinds of thoughtful, character-driven stories she'd long wanted to tell. But they played in art houses and film festivals, not packed theaters. That contrast became even clearer in 2002. She took on a supporting role as Mandy Moore's mother in the teen drama A Walk to Remember. It was a far cry from headlining major studio films. That same year, she pushed herself further in Dancing at the Blue Iguana, a raw drama centered on strippers in Los Angeles. To prepare, Daryl reportedly performed live at local strip clubs, committing fully to the role of Angel, a deeply troubled exotic dancer. The film aimed for gritty realism through improvisation, but its heavy emphasis on nudity overwhelmed whatever artistic ambitions it hoped to achieve. In 2003, she appeared in North Fork, directed by the Polish brothers. There she played Flower Hercules, a regal and compassionate hermaphrodite, one of 4 angelic figures visiting the dreams of a boy in a 1950s Montana town doomed by the construction of a dam. It was strange, poetic, and beautiful, and once again, it was made for cinephiles rather than mass audiences. At 43, Daryl made another daring move. She posed nude for Playboy's September 2003 issue. The message was unmistakable. She still had the confidence and beauty that once made her a star. She wasn't afraid of aging. She wasn't afraid of being seen. The spread generated headlines, but it didn't lead to better opportunities. If anything, it reinforced Hollywood's tendency to view her as an image rather than an artist. In a candid 2010 interview with The Guardian, Daryl later admitted that this period marked the lowest point of her career. By then, she had taken roles in numerous direct-to-video films. These were movies that skipped theaters entirely, landing straight on DVD shelves. She was honest about why she accepted them. "I did some films just for the cash," she said, hoping they'd go straight to video and never really be seen. For someone once considered untouchable in Hollywood, it was a painful confession. The work never stopped. The quality did, and she knew it. Then, unexpectedly, everything shifted. In 2003, an old ally reached out. Quentin Tarantino had a role for Daryl Hannah in his ambitious 2-part revenge saga, Kill Bill. She would play Elle Driver, a one-eyed assassin and member of the deadly Viper assassination squad. Cold, calculating, and utterly merciless, the character was unforgettable. Daryl leaned all the way in. Elle Driver became one of the most vivid performances of her career. The savage bathroom fight with Uma Thurman in Kill Bill Volume 2 was both brutal and brilliant. The role earned Daryl a second Saturn Award. For the first time in years, it felt like a comeback was real. She was back in a major film. She was working with an elite director. The reviews were the strongest she'd received in years. At 43, she still commanded the screen. But the renaissance everyone expected never arrived. Instead of opening doors, Kill Bill quietly closed a chapter. What looked like a resurrection turned out to be something else entirely. For years, the explanations seemed simple. Hollywood discards women as they age. And while that was certainly part of the truth, there was something far darker beneath the surface. And that truth would finally explain the fall. When the Me Too movement surged through Hollywood in 2017, Daryl Hannah finally broke her silence. Joining countless women who were speaking out, she publicly accused Harvey Weinstein of repeated harassment. In an interview with The New Yorker, she described multiple disturbing encounters during the production of Kill Bill. At one Cannes Film Festival, Weinstein reportedly pounded on her hotel room door so violently that she escaped through a back entrance. When he returned the following night, she barricaded herself inside her room. Years later, around the premiere of Kill Bill Volume 2, the situation escalated again. Weinstein allegedly used a key to enter her hotel room without permission while she was inside with her makeup artist. For Daryl, the pattern was unmistakable. She has long believed that her refusal to submit to Weinstein's advances led to professional retaliation. After Kill Bill, the work slowed dramatically. The offers that did arrive were smaller and less meaningful. What once felt like coincidence began to feel like exclusion. To her, the blacklist was real. But power and punishment weren't the only forces shaping her disappearance. In 2013, Daryl revealed something she had kept private since childhood. She had been diagnosed with autism. The extreme shyness that had haunted her early life never fully disappeared. Public appearances were agony. Interviews, talk shows, red carpets, all of it felt unbearable. "I've never been comfortable being the center of attention," she told People magazine. For years, she kept her diagnosis secret, afraid it would quietly end her career. Acting had always been her refuge, a way to disappear into someone else. Fame, on the other hand, was never part of the dream. Being Daryl Hannah, the celebrity, was something she never wanted to be. She also refused to compromise her values. A lifelong vegetarian and environmental activist, Daryl demanded eco-conscious practices on the projects she accepted. She openly boycotted films connected to human rights violations or environmental destruction. The stance was admirable. In Hollywood, it was also costly. As the industry moved on, Daryl moved inward and outward in a different way. Away from movie sets, she found purpose elsewhere. Environmental activism, once a side passion, became the center of her life. Throughout the 2000s and 2010s, she threw herself into the cause. She founded DH Love Life, a platform devoted to sustainable living. She protested the Keystone XL pipeline. She spoke at the United Nations Climate Change Summit and appeared at environmental conferences around the world. In 2012, she served as executive producer on the documentary Greedy Lying Bastards, which confronted climate change denial head-on. Her activism carried real consequences. She was arrested multiple times during protests. In 2013, she was notably detained alongside Robert F. Kennedy Jr. She joined the boards of several environmental organizations and founded the Sustainable Biodiesel Alliance. This wasn't branding, it was conviction. Daryl lived exactly as she preached. She went off the grid in Malibu, residing in a solar-powered home and driving a biodiesel vehicle. To Hollywood, she could seem difficult. To her, she was finally living honestly in an industry built on compromise. Then came a new chapter, unexpected and deeply personal. In 2014, Daryl began a relationship with legendary musician Neil Young. The timing drew controversy. Young had just filed for divorce from his wife of 36 years. David Crosby, his former bandmate, publicly lashed out, calling Daryl a purely poisonous predator. He later apologized. Neil and Daryl paid the backlash little attention. They connected through shared values, art, activism, and a deep concern for the planet. In 2018, they married in secret aboard Neil's boat in the San Juan Islands. Roughly 100 guests attended, including Joni Mitchell and Stephen Stills. Under a nearly full moon, Neil serenaded his bride with Harvest Moon. Phones and cameras were left behind. The moment belonged only to them. For someone who once lived under Hollywood's brightest lights, it was the quiet ending and beginning she had always wanted. What followed was intimate, quiet, and exactly right. Together, Daryl and Neil relocated to Ontario, Canada, choosing a peaceful property far removed from the noise of Los Angeles. There, Daryl shifted behind the camera, directing several films centered on Neil, including Paradox in 2018 and Barn in 2021. She still steps in front of the lens from time to time, appearing in projects like Netflix's Sense8 in 2015, but her priorities are unmistakably different now. As one saying goes, there's nothing more common than undiscovered genius. Then came a long overdue moment of recognition. In 2019, Daryl Hannah received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, an honor that arrived decades after her greatest box office triumphs. Looking back, it's impossible not to wonder about the roads not taken. What if Harvey Weinstein hadn't been allowed to destroy careers with impunity? What if Hollywood valued older actresses the same way it celebrates older actors? What if Daryl hadn't spent years battling her own nature under the harsh spotlight of fame? But maybe those questions miss the heart of the story. Daryl Hannah didn't fall from grace, she stepped away on her own terms. She chose principles over paychecks. She chose activism over red carpets. She chose a quiet life in Canada, shared with the man she loves, over the relentless machinery of Hollywood. She's spoken openly about the compromises required to survive in an industry never designed for someone like her. And today, at 63, she seems at peace. She's still creating, she's still fighting for causes that matter to her, and she's still living by the values she refused to abandon. "I feel fulfilled in my life," she told The Telegraph in 2007. "I love what I do. I'd love to do more of it, but I don't feel desperate like I need validation." That may be the most powerful lesson her story offers. Success isn't just about staying on top. Sometimes it's about knowing when to step away, about choosing yourself over expectation. Hollywood may have forgotten Daryl Hannah, the movie star, but Daryl Hannah, the person, built a life that truly mattered to her. The mermaid who captured our hearts in 1984 didn't vanish. She simply swam toward deeper, quieter waters, far beyond the reach of fame, and finally, fully herself. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and subscribe for more journeys through the lives of the stars who shaped our memories. Until next time, keep the memories alive.